Have you ever just stopped and wondered if the very way we think might be fundamentally flawed? Well, today we're diving into a really mind-bending book by Kitsos Tripos called The Eternally Present Dual Nature of Perception and the Dynamics of Emptiness. It's a deep journey into the fabric of reality itself, and it asks a pretty bold question: are our minds even equipped to understand it?
The author kicks things off by throwing us right into the deep end with this question from the philosopher Martin Heidegger, one that has just echoed through the centuries. Why is there something rather than nothing? This single, profound question, well, that's the launchpad for this entire investigation.
And right out of the gate, Tripos puts a pretty radical idea on the table. He basically argues that our rational, logical minds, the very tools we rely on to make sense of the world, are actually incapable of answering that ultimate question. He suggests our brains are just not built to grasp a reality that's governed by the bizarre, counterintuitive rules of things like quantum mechanics.
So, how are we going to wrap our heads around all this? Well, we're going to follow the author's argument step by step. First, we'll look for what he calls a crack in logic. Then, we'll explore this mismatch between our linear mind and what could be a cyclic universe. After that, we get to meet the hero of this story, a mathematical shape called the spinor, and see how it might reveal the universe's hidden patterns. And finally, we'll put all the pieces together to try and see the whole picture.
Okay, so let's start with that crack in our logic. The idea here is that there's a fundamental, deep-seated flaw in the way we perceive absolutely everything around us.
Tripos brings up this really powerful concept from ancient Greek thought to explain this. He says our everyday rational mind, he calls it dios, thinks in a straight line, right? It needs a starting point, a beginning, and it builds its case step by step. But he contrasts this with a totally different way of seeing things, which he calls Zeus. This Zeus perception sees reality as a cycle, eternal, whole, a place where opposites, like something and nothing, are actually part of the same thing.
And this is exactly where that linear dias mind just hits a wall. You see, rational thought can't handle the idea that a statement and its exact opposite could both be true at the same time. It gets totally tripped up by things that loop back on themselves, like a snake eating its own tail. And this failure to map these eternal circular processes, well, that's what leads our best scientific theories into paradoxes and dead ends.
So you've got this fundamental mismatch, right? A linear mind trying to understand what might be a cyclic universe. And that means our mental maps of reality, they could be profoundly, deeply incomplete.
This is a perfect way to visualize the problem. I mean, think about trying to draw a map of our round Earth on a flat piece of paper. You always get weird distortions. Tripos argues our linear mind does the exact same thing to reality. He uses the Klein bottle as an example, this bizarre shape where the inside and the outside are actually a single continuous surface. A linear description just can't capture that unity. It has to create a false boundary where one doesn't really exist.
Okay, so if our old tools are broken, what's the solution? This brings us to the absolute heart of the author's theory, a mathematical shape called the spinor, which he proposes is the master key to unlocking the whole cosmos.
So what in the world is a spinor? Well, it's a mathematical idea that perfectly models this concept of looping back on yourself. But here's the really wild part. A spinor only gets back to its original starting position after 2 full 360-degree rotations, not one. It has to turn a complete 720 degrees to come back home.
Just look at the path it takes here. That red loop, that's the first 360-degree turn. You can see that after that first loop, it's actually in the opposite orientation. It takes that second blue loop to finally get back to where it started. And this two-turn quality is so crucial, because it unifies two cycles that seem separate into one single, indivisible whole.
And this leads us to Tripos' grandest, most audacious claim. He suggests that this beautiful 3D spinor shape, which he calls the apple, is a model for the entire universe. In this model, the blue surface represents the field of matter, everything we can see and touch, and the red surface is the hidden field of antimatter. They're not two different things, they're just two faces of a single unified reality.
Now, that is a huge idea, but is there any evidence for it? That brings us to the hidden patterns of the universe. We're going to see if we can spot this shape everywhere, from the tiniest atom all the way up to the cosmos.
Let's start small, down at the atomic level. Our best theory of the subatomic world,
quantum mechanics, predicts that electrons exist in these absolutely stunning probability clouds called spherical harmonics. These are the actual geometric shapes of electron orbitals.
Now, the standard view, what they teach in textbooks, is that these are just statistical maps. They only show where an electron is likely to be. But Tripos argues for something way more radical. He claims these intricate, beautiful patterns aren't random at all. He says they are the deterministic, physical shapes that space itself is taking on, dictated by the universe's fundamental underlying spinorial geometry.
And here it is. This is the absolute linchpin of his entire argument. The exact same mathematical functions that generate these patterns in the atom are the ones that Tripos uses to generate his Apple model of the universe. The formula for the tiny is the same as the formula for the huge. It suggests a deeply fractal, self-similar reality, as above, so below.
So, if the atom and the entire universe are built from the same hidden blueprint, what on earth does that mean for us? This brings us to our final section, seeing the whole picture, and how this could literally change your perception of reality.
It all comes back to those two ways of seeing. Our linear Dai's mind sees what some philosophies call the field of becoming, a world of separate things, of birth and death, of time. But the holistic Zeus mind can perceive the field of being, the complete, timeless spinor. This is the true unified reality, which, because it contains all opposites that cancel each other out, ultimately adds up to what the author calls emptiness, not nothing, but a perfect, balanced, indivisible whole.
And this forces us to ask a really tough question. I mean, if the universe is truly one single indivisible thing, then what is our powerful, personal feeling of being a separate individual? Is it just an illusion? An artifact of our limited linear way of seeing things?
Tripos draws this fascinating parallel to psychology. He writes, "The second turn of the spinor is completely hidden and is what Carl Jung calls the shadow." Think about that for a second. Our conscious linear mind only sees that first 360-degree turn of reality. The second, opposite turn is our unconscious, our shadow self, that we have to integrate to see the complete picture of who we are.
And we end with this image, which really just captures the whole thesis of the book. The linear description our logical mind makes is just a tangent. It touches reality at a single point, but it never ever grasps its full shape. To see the whole thing, the true, spinorial, cyclical reality, requires something more than just logic. As they say, logic will get you from A to B, but imagination will take you everywhere. And maybe, just maybe, imagination is the only tool we really have to perceive the complete spinorial nature of everything.